your foundation, your trunk, your branches. You are beautiful and wise. I'm just going to. My heart is filled with loving kindness, and my computer was not plugged in. And I always have a backup. Thank you for your patience. If you were to peel back my hair, my skin, and my skull, and if you could see what was happening in my brain, you would see a classic example of the Buddhist concept of the monkey brain. What's my plan for today? What happened yesterday? What's on my to-do list? I need to make sure that I talk to this person. Oh, wow, I really screwed that conversation up. What was that thing I was supposed to remember? Yeah, I don't remember it. Is it really December 11th already? Yikes. Geez, I really like her scarf. My brain looks pretty much like my search engine does right now. A hot mess with all of the tabs open, questionable power sometimes, and so small that you can't even tell what they all are. The great challenge and opportunity of my life, the one that I keep learning over and over, we all have one of those, right? The one thing that we keep having to relearn. Mine is be here now. Here in the present moment, right here, connecting with my true self, just being in the stream of the universe that connects us all. Because of that, I find Buddhism very powerful, and I find it very challenging. We continue today with our sermon series for the year, looking at what the different world religions teach us about the concept of collective liberation and how we can find hope from them in these times where we honestly need to draw from as many sources as we possibly can. Now, I took an entire semester of Buddhism in seminary, and it is fair to say that we only scratched the surface there. And there are so many different types of Buddhism practiced in all of the areas of the world differently, with so much history, that it would be fair to say that we're not going to even cover what is the size of my little pinky, my collective liberation pinky, that is. But Buddhism starts with the story of seekers who explored faith. They came to Buddha. Are you God? They asked. No. I can't even. It just died. I think they're trying to teach me about Buddhism and just being here now, right? And I think it's saying, put that right over there. We're going to try this again. Seekers who explored faith came to Buddha. Are you a god? They asked. No. An angel? No. A saint? No. Then what are you? Buddha answered, I am awake. His answer became his title because that's what Buddha means. The Sanskrit root Buddh means both to wake up and to know. Buddha essentially means the enlightened one, and Buddhism entails the practice of becoming more enlightened, more like Buddha. Practitioners of Buddhism use meditation to be in the current moment and to use it to connect with one's true self, to alleviate suffering in our minds. Religious professor Leonard Swindler differentiates Buddhism from other religions this way. Buddhism uses the language of from below or from within, whereas religions with God-centered orientations like Christianity and other Abrahamic religions use the language from above or from without. That orientation can be helpful for us to consider. Buddhism is also a little bit like Unitarian Universalism in that it doesn't require adhering to one specific doctrine or belief statement. Buddhism works well with people of differing belief systems, as long as meditation and believing that you can connect inwards fits within that structure. So in exploring collective liberation, we have a challenge in exploring it. So because Buddhism versus other faiths is inherently so individual. It is using meditation, it is using your own mind, it is connecting with your own true self to liberate your mind and release the suffering. So how can we use Buddhism to explore the collective part of liberation? Well, I'm drawing today from plenty of experts of Buddhism that say that it is possible and inevitable and necessary part of Buddhism. Many of them are pushing within the current movements of Buddhism to embrace these possibilities more fully. Ruben Habito is a professor of world religions and spirituality and an author of several books on Zen Buddhism, which is one of the types of Buddhism. He explains that Zen Buddhism is a path to enlightenment of one's own self and explains its relationship to liberation this way. To liberate all beings is to liberate oneself and vice versa. He says that the path of awakening means that we can't just seek our own liberation because our own liberation isn't separate or independent from those of others. This feels to me like Unitarian Universalist seventh principle of seeing that interconnected web of all existence and our own part in it. Buddhism especially encourages the practitioner to see things as they truly are on a deep and interconnected level. Habito says, in seeing things as they truly are, one arrives at peace with oneself, peace with the world, and the entire universe. One thereby seeks to offer this deep, deep inner peace to all beings whom one embraces in a heart of boundless compassion. To see things as they truly are is to see oneself as not separate from, but rather connected with everything and everyone, enabling one to bear the pain of the world as one's own pain and share in the joys of all beings as one's very own. Now, this connectedness was a main tenet of one of the most famous contemporary Zen Buddhists and Nobel Peace Prize nominee, Thich Nhat Hanh, who died earlier this year. He explores this true self and our connectedness with others in his poem called "Please Call Me by My True Names." The master says, "I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks. And I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving." Take a breath and take that in. We think of ourselves often in our connection with the child, the poor, and the suffering. And Buddhism also, there's the challenging part, says we are connected to those who cause the suffering. And we are every being in between. So what these Buddhists are teaching us is that our own enlightenment is not enough. It must be connected to the suffering and enlightenment of all. It must be for all. And seeing our true selves means seeing how we are interconnected with everyone else. It's a lot to sit with, to meditate about, and to be with. In the book that inspired this sermon series, The Hope of Liberation in World Religions, there is a section exploring Buddhism as it is practiced in Thailand. The author is Tavivat Puntgar Evaviat, who is a program director at the World Buddhist University and is editor-in-chief of the literary magazine published by the World Fellowship of Buddhists. He is really pushing his fellow Buddhists to push beyond their personal work to collective liberation. He uses Buddhism in Thailand as an example of that. Before Thailand was modernized in a post-capitalistic world, the Buddhist monastery was the center of the village life, and the monks were its cultural leaders. They taught culture and rituals, but also education and medical care. The Buddhist values of sharing and cooperation defined the community. However, in modern society, this structure has collapsed, and now the Buddhist sanghas or communities are controlled by the government. The monks depend on food given to them by the Thai people, the majority of them who are poor and oppressed. He encourages followers to look at Buddhism from the socio-political perspective that aims at social justice. Greed is seen not just in an individual terms, but also as a built-in mechanism of oppressive social structures. If greed is to be reduced or eliminated, therefore personal restraint will not be enough. These social structures need to be changed as well. Many Buddhists seek liberation. You might be familiar with the term nirvana, by practicing meditation, but they do not pay sufficient attention enough to the ways society in which they live is organized. The author says, I wish to offer a challenge to Buddhist ethical values by interpreting liberation as necessarily involving social as well as political liberation. He says if we consider Buddhist liberation theology from a more structural perspective, we are forced to see that greed and hatred and delusion, which Buddhism identifies as the root of all harmful things, they currently prevail. And in order to overcome them, a person must not change only their personal conduct or lifestyle, but also the systems that create that structural greed, hatred, and delusion. To be very clear, the hope from Buddhism doesn't come from enlightenment itself, because we do not achieve enlightenment. Actually, the hope comes from the practicing. The practicing is always the ways of trying to connect with our direction towards enlightenment. It is the hope of connecting with our true selves and therefore connecting with the true self of all of existence. On its surface, Buddhism seems like it is a practice that is preoccupied with the studying of the individual self. But the hope and the practice of Buddhism is that by exploring the self, we realize that the self is not separate from, better than, or different from all the myriad things in the universe. If separation disappears, then there is no other. If there is no other, then we can envision the oneness of all. And with that mindset, we can truly live into the concept that none of us is free of suffering until all of us are free from suffering. May you be free of suffering. May we all be free of suffering. May you be filled with loving kindness. May we all be filled with loving kindness. May you be at peace. May we all be at peace. May it be so.